I want to play out every side of this story. And the first one is Luigi's. So my question is, what do you think would motivate such a violent crime against a high-profile figure in the big insurance industry?
I mean, obviously, I'll be the first to say violence is never the answer. And what happened is truly, truly tragic for Brian and his family and everybody involved, including Luigi. But what's equally as tragic is the 1.7 million lives that we lose every year to chronic disease. And these insurance companies are an implicit part of that destruction of our healthcare ecosystems. They have corporately captured segments of the healthcare industry, like you and I testified in front of the Senate about. We've been trying to ring the bell, and I've been screaming from a mountaintop for over 4 years since the first time I went on Rogan, trying to explain to people that these big insurance conglomerates are dangerous. And, you know, we talk so much about the catastrophic financial impact to America, to states, and to families. But the impact is so much greater because it's truly paid in human lives and human casualties. And so let's talk about Luigi. Let's talk about, I always like to come from a position of empathy and try to understand people. And again, nobody can ever condone what this kid did. But if I do put myself in his shoes, he went through a journey like so many patients. He had a debilitating spine injury, a spine injury where your discs slip out of place. That impinges nerves. Those nerves shoot into the extremities, like your hands, your feet, often causing numbness. And scariest is in men, it'll shoot into your genitals, causing erectile dysfunction, burning fire sensation, sometimes in your genitals and hands. I mean, it's like being tortured 24/7, needles sticking into your hands. It's hard for these people to sleep. And this is one of those procedures where people battle with the insurance company. And so if you were to walk through a typical day in the patient life of somebody like Luigi, I read that it took him 18 months to get the surgery approved. That's pretty common. It actually takes anywhere from 6 to 9 months on average to get an insurance company to approve the surgical procedure. The problem with that is you're in chronic pain. That means they're going to give you opioids. That's why so many of these spine patients get addicted to opioids. They wreck their endocrine system. They wreck their hormonal response. They have chronic constipation. All of these issues exacerbated by the opioids that were shoved down their throat that they have to take to function day to day. All the meanwhile, they can barely sleep, lay in bed. Everything's hurting. And the process of that, right, if you look at the medical process in general, it's an obstructionist process when it comes to surgical care. The insurance companies are quick to allow drugs, and I'll explain why here in a minute. And I think you know why after our discussions, but they're slow to approve surgeries. And so this kid was struggling with this for 18 months. Usually the insurance companies will make you go to a primary care first. You know, that's a 2 to 3 month process to get in with the primary care in this country. From there, they're going to say, whoa, buddy, that's not me. I got to refer you out. You need to go to a specialist. Now you go to a specialist. That's going to be another 3 or 4 months to get in with them. Then they're going to have to get a pre-approval to do your MRI. A lot of times the insurance company denies or delays the pre-approval. You fight with them to get that done. Now you finally get an MRI. You finally prove that you need the surgery. You finally get your day in the sun where you think you're going to get this healing factor and get this surgery done. And the last blow is it happens. The insurance company tells you, you don't get to choose your surgeon. The surgeon you want may be out of network and may not be covered by that provider. So they choose the surgeon. And now the surgeon botches the surgery and you're unhappy. And if they botch that surgery, you're talking about a lifetime of pain and suffering that never goes away. And even if they get that surgery right, the sad part about spine surgeries is there's a 40% chance you're going back under the knife within a decade. Because once we fuse the spine, and this is why I discourage people away from spine surgery in general, and this is why I'm such an advocate for stem cells, is once we fuse that spine, you create a rigidity issue where the spine's no longer natural. So this vertebrae is locked in and this one's mobile. Well, what happens is this vertebrae is going to slip and the spine collapses, and now they got to come fuse that spine. That's why eventually people end up fusing their entire spinal column and having all of these continual surgeries and they get caught on the merry-go-round.
Okay, hold on. So let's go back to, because you told me this, privately, so I think it's important we talk about this. The guy who was shot, the United Healthcare CEO. Listen, I understand this man's a father. Neither of us ever think violence is the answer. But who is this man? Because when you look at why this man might be targeted, there's insider trading stuff. You told me it was like tanking teachers. I don't understand
Again, out of empathy, I would say, let's sing his praises too on what he did do right. He graduated, I heard, from a town of 1,200 people. He finished valedictorian of his high school, a very smart individual. I'm sure his parents were very proud. And he climbed the corporate ladder and made his way up to being CEO of United.
Okay.
But what did he do with that power, right? Power, heavy is the head that wears the crown. You can choose which wolf to feed. You know that old adage, do you feed the light or do you feed the dark? And I'm sorry, when you look at the history and you look at the record, he fed the dark. He fed the dark. He implemented AI algorithm programs that rejected 90% of claims artificially, denying coverage to 90% of people. And then they go, whoops, sorry, accidental, right? Didn't mean to.
90%?
90? Yes, 90% of claims were getting denied via their AI algorithm, and they got busted with it. The other thing that happened is they were facing a Department of Justice investigation as an organization for the monopoly that they have, for bullying, intimidating, for their tactics, for putting people out of business, for their corporate capture of these medical practices, for forcing patients. It's a monopoly. And so they're facing DOJ investigation. They know that was going to go public, and this guy unloaded $15 million in stock before the news could break, plummeting teacher and firefighter retirement plans. And the only reason this became public knowledge is the Hollywood firefighter department sued United Healthcare because he cost them their fucking retirements. And these guys are multi-millionaire. You had a chance to do something good and you chose to do something bad. You were implicit in the death of millions of Americans. What happened to him was tragic. But what is happening to all of these innocent people who are battling cancer, who are battling osteoporosis, who are being drugged and doped to death is a bigger tragedy. I'm sorry. They are the innocents. They are the ones losing their lives. They are the mothers, brothers, sisters. I lost my brother to this crisis, to an opioid crisis that never should have happened in the fucking first place. Because if we look at how it happened, the FDA was captured by Purdue. That individual went to go work for Purdue once they gave them the golden ticket and let them put that drug on the market. Then the PBMs negotiated a deal with Purdue to get a kickback. So they made just as much money as Purdue Pharma on this crisis of addiction and abuse. Then they put in when we talk about deny, delay, the safety nets to prevent opioid abuse are the pharmacogenetic tests we talked about. Let's identify if this patient can even metabolize this drug. Let's identify if they're going to be a slow, fast, or moderate metabolizer and be at risk of ODing and dying. They took that safety net. The insurance company said, no, we're not going to cover that. Denied. Gone. So now you have no way to get a blueprint for success. Okay, second safety net. We can test them with a toxicology screen to make sure they don't divert or abuse this drug. Denied. Gone. Insurance companies got rid of it. Now we have no way to tell that this patient that you prescribed a year worth of fucking opioids is not taking it and selling it on the black market, diverting it to somebody else, or overutilizing it. Okay? And then the last pillar is alternative care. Compounding pharmacies. Let's go back to it. We were making non-abusive, non-addictive pain creams that treat neuropathic pain. Injuries, just like the one Luigi suffered, could have been treated with a non-abusive, non-addictive topical, but it wasn't. Why? Because they hate compounding pharmacies because we don't pay to play. We don't give them a kickback. Purdue Pharma did. So Purdue Pharma bought its way into a market share, bribed the FDA, bribed the pharmacies, bribed all the insurance companies, and got everyone chronically addicted to opioids. And they printed fucking billions of dollars off of it while we died in the streets. Don't tell me these people are innocent. They're criminals. They should all be federally indicted and tried.
Okay. This was in it, just so people are listening, and if you think that we're crazy, this actually is Brigham explaining something to me that I had sent him that was in the New York Times. And for the New York Times to be brave enough to cover something that goes after big insurance and big pharma, and so I didn't understand it because it was saying, and I encourage everyone to look it up, New York Times drug makers paid middlemen, known as pharmacy benefit managers, to not restrict painkiller prescriptions. A New York Times investigation has found for years the benefit managers took payments from opioid manufacturers, including Purdue Pharma, in return for not restricting the flow of pills, as tens of thousands of Americans overdosed and died from prescription painkillers as the middlemen collected billions of dollars in payments. I want to lean into the pain aspect a little bit, just because personally, I can speak to that. And I had 3 herniations and a fracture. And while it sounds like I had experts looking at my MRI and saying like, oh, this is nothing. And Brig, I couldn't walk for 6 months. And that's not hyperbole. I mean, I couldn't stand up without the pain being so great it would knock me to the ground. I crawled around on my hands and knees with construction knee pads, and I would just weep and think, if this doesn't get better, like, I can see why somebody would arguably consider taking their lives or get to a place of complete desperation because it's just no quality of life. You can't leave the house. It's not like, oh, tingling. It's just freaking debilitating pain. And I can't imagine what I would have done without having the cash to pay for the MRI. Brigham, I couldn't get anything. Being me, I couldn't even get into a pain management center. They're like, yeah, come back in 6 months. But they were willing to give me the whatever pills I wanted. They didn't work, thank God, which now because I know you, I know they didn't work because my genetics are, not compatible with these drugs.
Yeah, you're not a metabolizer.
But of course, nobody says that. They threw whatever drugs at me. I took them. They didn't actually work, which I thank God for. And the level of desperation is so great when you are suffering in that way and thinking that you have nothing left to live for. Anyway, so I'm projecting myself into this situation. The kid has no history of mental illness.
But we can all be broken, right? I mean, when you're under severe pain, I think of how much my attitude changes when I'm hungry. That's just hunger. Can you imagine excruciating pain, erectile dysfunction as a 20-something-year-old kid, and you're battling this? And then I don't know what happened on the back end with Billy.